Aaron, are we ready to get started? I'll kick us off.
Yep, ready to go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Anna Tragister. I am the Artist and Community Services Manager at the Indiana Arts Commission. The Indiana Arts Commission is your state arts agency. We are funded by the Indiana General Assembly and the National Endowment for the Arts. And we have lots of resources for artists and arts organizations across Indiana, including this webinar series. This is the first of several webinars that we'll do in the coming months. In the future, you'll hear about other pragmatic business and practice habits and skills to keep you not only healthy and sane, but also thriving, including things like taxes and retirement. Yay, everyone needs that kind of advice, right? But today, we're excited for you to hear from Aaron Gansey about Website User Experience 101. Aaron Gansey is an Associate Professor of Visual Communications Design at IUPUI's Parent School of Art and Design. He has 15 years of experience as a web designer. He frequently collaborates with both researchers and businesses to create websites and apps that people actually want to use. More than 100 million people have used a website or app that he has designed. So let's get started. You're gonna love this today. Thanks, Aaron, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'm gonna just go ahead and jump right in here so we have plenty of time, excuse me, at the end for questions. I mentioned before most of you joined that I have two small children and it's almost their bath time. So if you hear some small children frolicking in the background, that's what's happening. Yes, I'm an associate professor at Heron. I teach a variety of design courses, but mostly the web and mobile app software, visual front end courses, as well as a series of experience design courses that involve both digital and non-digital aspects. But I was invited here to talk about website design and website usage specifically, so I'm gonna go into that. Good place to start here is, oops, lost my mouse. There we go. People today live online, but what we don't think about is that they don't live on our websites, the websites that we want them to be, that we're putting out there in the world, that we think they're on a lot of the time. It's simply not the case. Most of the time people are on social media, YouTube, etc. We spend a lot of time online, but not on kind of traditional marketing websites where we're kind of pushing out information for people to go find. So what I'm going to talk about today is kind of how to think about the website in the grand scheme of what you're trying to do, and not put too much weight in the website, not ask the website to do too much work, because we know that it can't do as much as we hope it will. So how we tend to think about websites or people using our websites is, we think someone says to themselves, I'd like to visit a website, and then they go to that website, but that's not actually how it happens, right? Typically how people get to a website is they want to accomplish something. They have something in their lives that they want to, that they need to get done, right? And then they go through a series of tasks that allows them to accomplish their big goal. When we think about a website helping them accomplish that goal that they're striving for, there's really two steps. One is, can they find the right tool for the job at hand, the thing that's going to let them accomplish their task? And then once they get there, will the thing they found enable them to finish the job, right? To seal the deal. This is the typical path that we think of when we think of someone encountering a website that we might make. So you see here that the website is only really one piece of that puzzle. There's the website. But there are other phases, right? So it first starts with understanding what is the need that someone has, what is the thing they're trying to accomplish. How do we link them onto the website where the information that we're trying to push out there is available? And then how does that website in turn allow them to accomplish the goal? So I'm going to talk you through a couple of kind of helpful things to think about in each one of those key turning points that might help you as you start to set up your website. So here's an example. This is all made up. So if we have a person that, an artist out in the world that wants to collaborate with other artists, that's the need. That's the core thing that's driving all of the interaction moving forward. What we know, as we just talked about, is that they don't just go to a specific URL or web address that they know is, I need to do this thing and I'm just going to go to a website, right? What tends to happen is something outside of your website draws them in. So that could be that they follow an Instagram account that shares resources. They could be involved with the Arts Commission, who are sort of forwarding resources to them. Could be that they saw a sign in a coffee shop that's promoting what you have online. It could be that a friend sent them a link on Facebook. These are all common ways that people might learn about that website, right? So this is the link that gets you from, I have a need, to, I'm going to find a tool that will enable me to satisfy that need. So in our example here, a friend sent me a link on Facebook, and I visit a made-up service called Artist Connection to learn more about what they have to offer. And on that website, I found a way to contact someone at Artist Connection that can help get me connected into the community. So now we have a complete cycle all the way through, where it started with a need and ended with the goal being accomplished. The website is just one piece of that big puzzle. So when you start thinking about how to make your website and what to put on your website, and how to get people to your website, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. So the first is, what does your website do? The next is, how and why would someone go there? Both how and why. And then lastly, how will you build it? So I'm going to go through each one of these questions and hopefully have some answers for you so that you can get started on making a website that can actually accomplish what you're hoping it might. So first, what does your website do? And this is really just a way to get you to think about what you're putting on the website and what you're actually trying to accomplish in putting something on the web. So here's some examples. Are you displaying a portfolio, trying to sell artwork, encouraging communication, building connections, etc.? I'm not sure exactly what everybody's trying to do through their website. We do have, I've got a bunch of time at the end here where I hope that you might share some of the things you're hoping to do, and maybe I can give you some ideas of how to move forward. But you really just need to kind of take inventory of what is it that you're hoping to accomplish through making a website. And before you begin, you all have an idea, I think, of what you want to put on your website, but you really need to think about the person at the other end of that site. So you have a group of people who you're hoping will visit the website. What is it that they actually need in their life that your website will help them accomplish? So by taking a step back before you really dive into things, you can kind of prioritize what you're putting there and how you're directing people to it by aligning it with their need. So just two questions for you to think about. What need are you fulfilling, and what goal are you letting people satisfy? Okay, then a few other things to think about as you're thinking about what your website does. One is to think of yourself as a service provider, right? So it's easy for us as web content producers to think of ourselves as simply that content producer or kind of editor who's just putting content into the world. But once you start to think about the person at the other end of that interaction who is coming to your website for a specific reason, you are essentially providing a service that allows them to accomplish that, their original goal and satisfy that need. So you're connecting people to a thing or experience that they want. That could be your artwork, it could be events around town, it could be anything. But the website is likely only one part of that connection. And you need to think about what are the other necessary parts, right? So are there other things in that sequence, kind of that cycle that we looked at the beginning, that are necessary to go from need to accomplished goal? So that takes us into the next section, which is why would someone visit your website? So there are 2 points that we need to focus on in the experience, that sequence of actions that need special attention. So one is what connects them to the site, and the other is how does the site seal the deal, right? So how does once they're on the site, how do you get them to do the thing that you were hoping that they would do via the site? And here on our sequence, you can see those 2 points with the white arrows. Those are the 2 points that we really want to focus on, right? So what's the kind of hook into the website, and then how does the website facilitate them actually doing the thing that you're hoping that they'll do? So first, what connects them to the site? In the experience design world, we talk about this concept of touch points, which is anytime a person comes in contact with your service, right? So if you're thinking of yourself as a service provider, this would be any moment in time where they're sort of learning about what you're offering to the world. So common touch points in this context might be physical signage. So that could be, the poster at the coffee shop. It could be organic social media, which just means that you kind of have a social media presence for your organization or for your artwork, where you are posting online, but you're not really buying ads, right? You could buy social media ads, that would be another way, but organic social media just means you're sort of interacting on social media to get people to the site. Digital ads then would be taking that next step and actually placing kind of marketing inside of either social media or, depending on the size of your organization, sponsoring podcasts or anything that's kind of digital that is easy for people to transition to a website. And word of mouth, of course, is the most important. So when you think about word of mouth, you think about, is it easy for someone to say the name of your organization? Do you have a web address that's easy to share, just by saying to someone, that kind of stuff? Or if you have social media set up, you can say, go visit my Facebook page or my Instagram feed. I've got a couple examples here of organizations that use Instagram fairly effectively at getting people to the site. So the first is called Working Not Working. It's actually a creative placement agency. I think they help creatives find employment. But their social media presence is really just kind of artwork for the most part. So they post interesting things that they see, or people that are in their network, work that's coming, that new work that's coming out. But they do a good job of peppering in opportunities from the organization, right? So here you can see in the center column, you can see this asking, not asking live, which I think there's one happening right now. That is kind of one of their service offerings. So they want places for people to ask questions, for creatives to ask questions of other creatives, kind of like what we're doing right now. But it's not just ads about what you can go do, but they're creating a space where people actually want to engage with the content. They want to look at interesting artwork, but then when something relevant comes up, they get that as well. And then on the right-hand side, you can see their website, that if you follow the link in their bio, it takes you to the website where you actually can start getting, you can start utilizing their service. The next is Amplifier. So here you can see, actually I put their Facebook page just so you saw another example. Amplifier is a group in Seattle that Shepard Fairey is involved, as well as a few other well-known artists, that they make artwork for social causes, specifically to use at rallies or marches, or those kind of public events where a visual identity, visual presentation might help. They do something similar where they post a lot of kind of interesting work that creative people just like to look at, and then eventually, here and there, they throw in kind of some ways to get back to their website, or events that they're hosting, or workshops that they're hosting, etc. So on the right, you can see when you get to their website, there's immediately ways to join the movement, right? To help their organization, or to start downloading some of the artwork that they generate that you could use at a march or a rally in your town. So those are just two organizations that are using kind of social media as the link into their website where people can actually accomplish the thing. So it's easy to kind of share these interesting things, right? This print, or in the other example, these images are easy to share, and they're visually interesting and intriguing, and get people engaged with your brand or organization. Okay, so the second part of that equation was, how does your site seal the deal, which is how do you actually make that turn to get them to engage with what you're offering. So you have to think about your website's main purpose as a way to finish the goal sequence. The goal sequence is that sequence of actions that we looked at. So it's just a way to kind of push somebody over the hump into engaging with whatever you're offering. That could mean, showing up to an event that you're hosting, or actually buying work online. It could be anything. So when you think about someone, I'll go back to this example here. So I was on Amplifier's social media, and then when I got to the Amplifier site, which I'm kind of scrolled down a little bit here, but you can see that I'm on Amplifier's site, and I have a couple different ways where I know I can take action, right? So here in the second paragraph, after people confirm that they're in the right place, so I'm on Amplifier's site, they want to accomplish their goal. So they have probably become somewhat accustomed to what you're doing off of the website, and once they're there, you just want to confirm that, yeah, this is the thing I heard about, and I'd like to take action. So don't let your site get in the way. That's a big mistake that a lot of people make, where they're trying to kind of overstimulate the user or throw a bunch of stuff at them instead of just kind of letting them accomplish the thing that they're there to do. Here's a couple stats that put that in context. So most people give a website 10 to 20 seconds to prove that it's what they need. Not much time. And something that a lot of kind of first-time web producers don't think about is that most of the users are accessing your site on a mobile device. So we tend to think about, at least I still think about a website, like if somebody says website to me, I think of a laptop or a desktop computer with a 1300 pixel wide browser window on it with a website loaded in it, but that's not how most users access the web anymore, especially at younger demographics. This 60 to 70% of users are accessing sites on a mobile device. That number just keeps going up every year. And then 50% of all social media users are mobile only, which means they don't even have a desktop computer or a laptop. So they are only accessing the web via a mobile phone or tablet. So you have to think about when you're making websites that your website looks good and that it's going to hook people in that 10 to 20 seconds on both mobile and full desktop screen size. So here's some things to think about. I have some bullet points and then I'm going to show you some examples. So you want your site to have clear main navigation being that like main menu on any given page, that you can clearly know what sections are on the site, so that remember, people are coming in with a goal that they can see. Oh, I wanted to learn more about that organization. I can probably look in the About tab, or I want to donate and I can see a donate button there. You want to put calls to action for anticipated goals. So calls to action means kind of buttons or links, or clearly labeling a section as something that you think people are likely to come there for. So if you've been promoting an event, or you've been making a bunch of posters to get people to sign up for something, you want to make sure you have that sign up button front and center on the first load of the page. You want to prioritize content. So what I mean by that is you don't need to spend a lot of time what I call like mood setting, right? So you could have like elaborate loading screens, or you dump somebody into a gallery that they have to click through before they can actually get to some information about you. You want to prioritize the content that you think people are there to see, so that they can get to it faster. Remember that 10 to 20 seconds, and I think the stat is if you hook them in the 10 to 20 seconds, most people only spend like 2 minutes on a website. So you want to get them what they're there for as quickly as you can. Minimize visual clutter. So I'm not going to go deep into kind of visual design tips, but you want to keep the site organized, and minimal colors, clear to read type, so that it's easy to kind of scan the page and get an idea of what you're looking, so that they can get an idea of what they're looking at and identify what they're looking for. And then that what we just talked about with mobile screens, you want to make sure your website is optimized for all screens, but especially mobile. And when I talk about some ways that you might build a website, a lot of the modern tools that you can use to build websites have that functionality built in. So here's some examples. This is an illustrator designer named Jessica Hish. Some of you might have heard of her, but she has a pretty nice website. So this is the first load of her website. So I just typed in jessicahish.com. This is what loaded. She has some new books that she's promoting, and so you can see, very clear at the top, who is she? Next thing that you see is her newest book, and a nice big link to pre-order that. So at the top you can see the clear navigation. This is the main navigation. So she offers different services, and there are links to each one of those kind of buckets of information that you might want to find. So you could see a portfolio of her work. She does a lot of logo work, so you could see those specifically. Writing, teaching, I assume is a blog about, and then shop to go into to purchase things. Here you can see that pre-order link. That's what I'd call a call to action, right? So she's actually got two of them there. So the other one is here. Learn more about it here. That both, I think, link you off to Amazon. And here's her site on mobile. So you can see it's optimized for mobile, meaning that you're not looking at this full website on a tiny screen, but they've adjusted it so that the paragraphs fit in the screen, that the images fit in the screen, and you can read all the text easily. And then here you can see on the right, this is just scrolled down a little bit. This book is from the left-hand column, that the pre-order call to action is right there within the first scroll. So the other thing to think about on mobile websites is people's natural state of being, I call it, is scrolling on mobile. So if you think about your own mobile phone usage, if you go to a website or you load something on Facebook or whatever you're using, Instagram especially, your natural state is just to start scrolling, right? So it's okay that the call to action here is just a bit below the screen, the first screen load, but because you're going to get there almost immediately as soon as you start scrolling. Here is an Indianapolis organization. I don't know anyone at ArtMix, but I thought their service sounded cool. I don't even know if they're currently still doing things. Maybe some of you know them. But I wanted to show a local example of somebody who I think kind of, Jessica Hish is a famous designer. I'm sure she has a lot of money to pay somebody to make her website, but I think ArtMix is probably in the same boat as a lot of you are. So clear navigation at the top, same as Jessica. Clear call to action. So they have a day in the life series that they're promoting, and a link to the episodes. Clear in the purple text there is a clear statement about what they're doing, who they are. And then below that is, almost in the first screen, you can see a link to their shop. So they're really getting you off into the areas that you are likely there to satisfy the need that you came into the site. And then here are just some more calls to action as an example. Here's the Amplifier's full site, and just wanted to point out that you can, at the top of every page, they've got this big donate button. They're clearly trying to, that's one of the things they're hoping people will do when they get to the site. Here is their full site. So this is a desktop web page. I just screenshotted the whole thing, so just scrolled all the way down. And what I wanted to point out here is that they're visually separating sections of content. So this is what I talk about when I mention reducing visual clutter, or organizing like content, making kind of visual clusters of information. That here you can see very clearly that okay, here's a how to or about section. Here's a section about campaigns. Here is a section to download and print. You kind of know what section you're in because the background changes and there's a nice, clear, large header. This is an easy way to kind of visually cluster information, so you're not trying to overload somebody with all these different things in one view, but you know within a couple scrolls you can get all the different things you're offering just with different visual hierarchy. And here, just pointing out the footer at the bottom there. Footers are always helpful because people like footers, mostly because you always know that that's kind of where you can find contact information, where you can find social media links, maybe the address or a phone number. That area is always is kind of standard across the web. Okay, so next, how will you build your site? I think this is a more practical question probably for most of you. I think as you probably have limited budget, I want to try to give you a sense of what you might be able to do with a fairly low amount of money to get a website up and running. But some things to think about first. As you're thinking about how you're going to build your site, you have to think about the long-term maintenance before you get started. So what I mean by that is, how are you going to keep the site updated? What you don't want to do is put out a nice set of content and after 6 months or 9 months it gets outdated, then the site becomes useless, right? So you want to make sure you're building in that kind of ability to quickly update the site so that it can have a longer life. We tend to think about making a site as this kind of burst of activity at the beginning, and then don't really, I'm guilty of this too, everyone's guilty of this, and not really planning the long term of making sure the site can live past that initial burst of activity. So a good site is an up-to-date site. And you want to use the method that is easiest for you to update. That's the most important thing as you think about how to build your site in Old English. And I'm speaking as a web designer who contracts with people to build websites. You only want to contract with a web designer developer kind of shop if you're doing something really unique or complex. And I don't mean unique in the sense of like, we're all unique, but in the sense of like, you can't find a template out there for it, or you're really trying to, who knows, you want to make some AR experience where people can see your artwork laid on top of the world through their phone. You're going to have to get a developer involved in that, of course. But there are a lot of good tools out there that you can use to get up and running with your website, again, with the idea in mind of a good site is an up-to-date site. So here, I'm going to run through some examples for you, and then I've got some slides at the end that kind of give overview of each one of these options. So I'm going to go from least complicated to most complicated, and some of you might have heard of these examples. I hope this is a helpful refresher. So there are services out there for artists that you can host a portfolio and let people purchase your work, and really not much else, right? So that's like this service called Big Cartel. There are others out there. I'm just using Big Cartel as an example, and it seems like a lot of the artists I follow use it. It's it'll make something that looks like a website for you, but you're not really customizing the layout of the site. It's really just a way to upload your images and for people to kind of follow through and purchase what you're selling. I think they might have some very basic kind of landing page layout tools. Next is a set of variety of tools that you could use to make fairly complex websites very easily. So you've probably heard of some of these services before, and I'm here just to tell you that, you know, you shouldn't feel intimidated by using something like this, because it's very intuitive once you get into it of moving things around the page, of getting started. They do a really good job of starting you with templates. So the most common one is Squarespace, and you can do anything from, you know, you can make pages, you can customize your pages, you can sell things, you know, you can set up a store, you can host YouTube videos, etc. You can do, really, you could, anything you think of as like what you would want on a web page, you can do with Squarespace. Wix is another service that is very similar to Squarespace, that again does the same thing. It's, you know, you can try both of these services, so you might play around with each of them and see which one you're more comfortable with editing, and go from there. The other one you could think about is WordPress.com, and I'm going to emphasize .com, which is different than WordPress.org, which we'll talk about in a minute. WordPress.com is kind of a user-friendly front end to WordPress sites that acts a lot like Squarespace and Wix. So it's the same thing. Think of WordPress.com as a Squarespace competitor. Getting a little more, I lost one of my screenshots. Getting a little more complex now is WordPress.org, which is what I think a lot of people talk about when they talk about WordPress, which is really like full customization. So often you'd be surprised at how many websites on the web are built using WordPress's infrastructure. I think if I made up a statistic, it would be completely made up, but it's a lot. Like half of the web is running on some version of WordPress. The difference here between WordPress.org and WordPress.com is you have to know how to set it up. So you have to buy server space. You have to be comfortable adding plugins into it once you get it set up, and really kind of messing around with some settings, at the very least, right? But there are services like Bluehost that will let you buy server space where you can host the website, and the WordPress stuff is already set up for you, so it's kind of a plug and play to some degree. The one thing to think about with WordPress, it does give you a lot more flexibility in terms of what you can build, but it involves a lot more upkeep. So you have to install updates to it, and sometimes those updates are critical, and things will break on your site if they're not updated. So it does take a little bit more work in the long run. So here's an overview of those things again. So first tier was that very easy to set up and manage, but limited options. They include things like portfolio and store. This is the big Cartel example. Costs between $120 to $360 a year, depending on what you're wanting out of it. You know, I think the upper tiers are, they all have to do with how much stuff you're selling, basically. So, you know, I think most people probably live in that lower tier, but that's the range. The next step up is the very easy to set up and manage, but with kind of a lot more options and functionality. So things you could do here: build a portfolio, store. You can connect your marketing email links. So like if you use MailChimp or those kind of services, there's integration there. And you can make any kind of general web page. Squarespace costs anywhere from, or actually any of these services that cost anywhere from $140 to $500 a year. They're different than just paying somebody to make a website up front, where you pay monthly or yearly to have the site continue to be hosted, and that includes your web address, and it's all one package, so it's kind of a plug and play. I've used Squarespace for years as my personal site, simply because it's easy to update. So I have full capability to make my own site, but I just don't want to deal with the hassle of keeping my WordPress up to date and managing server space and all that kind of stuff. So the most advanced, you would probably need some coding skill, or at least some knowledge of how servers work. Is that WordPress.org option, and you can do literally anything with that. The cost is lower after you get over the initial hump, so it's about $100 a year. That's just for the hosting the website and your domain, but your web address and all that kind of stuff is about $100 a year. But then if you need to pay somebody up front to design it and build it for you, you have those initial costs. And then I just wanted to give you a sense of what professional web design and development costs. So this is the most advanced. So if you're contracting with a development house, you can literally build anything, but those come with high costs. And something to keep in mind is that if you're building something from scratch, you probably don't have those kind of easy to update features that you would get with these other services. Even WordPress.org has nice, easy to use, easy to update pieces. It just takes a little bit more know-how. But in these cases, you might actually have to pay a developer to make updates for you, or if you're doing something more advanced. This should not be, I don't know if it's any of you, but it should not be most of you for what you need. I just wanted to give you a sense of what hourly rates look like. So designers charge anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour. This is for, especially, if you're talking about doing really complicated interactions online, or if you're trying to build some kind of interactive art piece that lives on the web, that might involve that. And then developers are very expensive. I think most of them live in that $150 to $200 an hour range. And completely custom web jobs can easily surpass $10,000. I think that's probably like a walk in the door price. Okay, so just as a recap, as you get started thinking about your website, I want you to think about three things. So what does your site do? Remember, in that you want to think about your site. You want to think about yourself as a service provider and your website as just one piece in that bigger puzzle. Next, I want you to think about how would someone go to your website. So how did they learn about it? Why did they get there? And then once they get there, how do you seal the deal? So that we talked about was, simple layout things of putting calls to action in the initial load of the page, or clear navigation so that they can jump between sections, that kind of stuff. And then lastly, how will you build it? Gave you a few good options for how to get started on building your web page. I didn't show you the last custom thing of 10,000 plus to scare you, but just to give you a sense of you can accomplish a lot, and probably 90% of what most people need to do on the web can be accomplished through those services like Squarespace or Wix or WordPresscom, and then a lot of what you might be hoping to do if you're just trying to sell work could very well be accomplished through those very easy to use tools like Big Cartel. I think Adobe has some things built now too that let you build portfolio sites very easily. So that's what I have for you. We have some time for question and answer now. So I'm wondering if any of you have questions about how to get started or anything I shared with you. Wanted some clarification. Just kind of open the floor. No questions, covered it all. Question about analytics. Okay. So analytics. So the question came in the chat, how do I monitor my site analytics? So analytics means like statistics about how people are using your site. And a lot of all of the tools that I mentioned that are easy to update and manage have analytics built into them. So you can actually see how long people are on your site, where they came from, even where they are. You can see down to your. It's very creepy but interesting. You can see a lot of information about your website users. WordPress.org. So if you're building a WordPress site, there's a thing called Google Analytics that you can easily plug into your site. That will track all that information for you, and then you just use a Google login to track that. That's a free service. Okay, what are requirements for shopping cart websites? Legalese. Is that question? Requirements for shopping? I don't. Can you clarify what requirements means, or legalese? Okay, disclaimers. So, Lisa, can you give me an example of what you're wanting to put on your site that you might want a disclaimer for? So while she's typing, I'll say, but I'll just give you a piece of information about shopping carts online. So the services, all the services that I showed you, they offer online store capability. And they will all charge you some percentage of your sale as a transaction fee. So that's how they stay in business, right? It's usually 3%. So just keep that in mind if you're posting, if you're trying to sell things online. Okay, thinking of required privacy statement. So there's no privacy statement that you're kind of required to put there. The only thing I can think of that you might want to put is, so you'll want to put, especially if you're posting images of your work, to put a copyright notice at the bottom, or if you're protecting your work with Creative Commons, you want to make sure that that's clearly visible on the site. Just put the copyright symbol and the year, so that and your name or your organization's name, so that people know that, or so that it's clear that you are the owner of that content. I'm not sure of a privacy statement that, oh, okay, is there a legal requirement to show how I'm collecting customer data? No, because we live in the United States. No, there's not a requirement to do that. If you are just doing a regular website, right? So if you're just, if you're not purposefully collecting kind of, you know, if someone is inputting their personal information, so if they're giving you credit card information, or if they're giving you where they live or that kind of stuff, then you would need some kind of opt-in, right? So they're authorizing that, yes, you have permission to have this information. The information that analytics shows you is actually just information that our computers share with the internet at all times, right? So your browser knows where you are, and it's actually not your browser, it's your internet service provider. So the Verizons and AT&Ts of the world have that information, because all of your web traffic goes through it. And so every time you load a website in your browser, you're actually sharing that information with the site. There's not much you can do about that other than, this is a different lecture, but you can download a VPN service if you're personally worried about that. Okay, do I have to ask customers at the point of purchase if I can send them marketing emails? If you want, the question is, do I need to ask them if I want to send marketing emails? I think that's just a nice thing to do, right? So there's nothing that says that you have to alert them that you're going to send emails, but it's nice. It's usually, so what you want to do there is opt in. So you might see often websites will do something that we call opt out, which is you have on that page when you finish checking out, and it says, would you like to receive information from us in the future? If that box is checked by default, that's called an opt out. So you have to manually uncheck it to say, no, I don't want those things. If you leave it unchecked, you can say that, but you know, that's opt in, like, yes, I want to have those. Question, how might you learn about how your audience typically access information or accomplish skills online? Good. Yeah, so the question about how you can learn about how your audience typically accesses information. So the easiest way is to ask them. You know, if you could build a I don't know what to call it, like a sounding board, right? Like a board of informally of people who, you know, are interested in your type of organization, that you could kind of just informally ask them. The other way, you know, a good place to get started at least is just to think about, you are likely similar to the type of person that you're hoping to attract. And so just think about your own habits, right? Think about how you learn about information in the arts, or, you know, anything generally, and kind of lean into that, right? So if you get a lot of information on Instagram, that might be where you start. If you, like to see, you know, if you look at stuff in the physical world that then you can translate onto the web, start with that. It might be kind of a trial and error at first, but that's a good place to start. Anything else? Any tips for portfolio websites and getting people engaged? So I'd say one thing is to make sure that you're continuing to put content on there. So if you want people to engage with the website, you need to have something for them to engage with, right? So if you upload a bunch of content and then don't upload it again for 6 months, that's like the likelihood of them engaging with it is low because there's nothing for them to engage with, right? The other way I would say is the kind of social media tie-ins that we talked about, that again kind of keep you in people's peripheral vision, right? So I think social media is really good at just keeping awareness of you as a creative individual. I've seen a lot of artists lately doing they use Instagram as a way, I think of it as a way to kind of show process, which is really interesting. Like that's how we want to engage with artists. As artists, we want to engage with other artists by like picking their brain, essentially. So you see a lot of times people using the Instagram stories or the Facebook, can't think what the Facebook version of that is, but Facebook version of Instagram stories, where it's kind of really short bursts of pictures or videos that get erased after 24 hours, just to kind of show you what you're working on, or show stuff in progress that will get people coming back to your site when it's time for them to think about buying something.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Erin, thank you so much. So informative. Look at all my notes, right? Okay, so this is being recorded and it will be posted everywhere that links are found, including on our social media and on our Artist Resources Hub, which you'll be seeing more of in the coming weeks. And I'm sure that Bridget will send out a beautiful email as well. So hope to see you all again in our next Artist Services webinar series. Dates TBD, but you're not going to want to miss it, so stay tuned. And as always, feel free to reach out to us. You see Erin's contact information here on the screen, and my contact information is all over our website. So hope to hear from you soon. Have a great night.
Thank you.